Okay, so today we're going to unpack a story that I think every hopeful parent out there really needs to hear. It's a journey that starts out with all the promise of modern science, But then it takes this absolutely terrifying turn with just a single test result. And what it reveals is a lesson that is so critical. A screening test is not a diagnosis. Let's get right into it. This quote. Wow. It really just sets the scene perfectly, doesn't it? It captures that feeling, that deep, profound hope of an intended mother. We're going to call her Elle. She's at the very beginning of her surrogacy journey. And I mean, every single sign was pointing toward a healthy, happy pregnancy. Everything was looking perfect. So this whole journey started on what seemed like the strongest possible footing you could imagine. They had the absolute best of modern medical tech on their side. And because of that, everyone involved just felt this deep sense of confidence, a real sense of security. Let's actually walk through the timeline here. So first, the embryo gets tested using something called PGT-A, and it's deemed chromosomally normal. I mean, that's a huge green light, right? Then, the transfer itself, a total success. The embryo implanted, and the early stages of the pregnancy were progressing just smoothly, perfectly. All the pieces were just falling right into place exactly how they'd hoped. But you know how these stories go. Just when everything seemed totally secure, the whole thing takes a sudden, really frightening turn. A simple, routine procedure ends up leading to a massive crisis. So here's what happened. At 14 weeks, the surrogate has a very common, totally non-invasive prenatal test. This is just standard procedure. It's a normal part of modern prenatal care, something that's done in countless pregnancies every single day. Nothing out of the ordinary. So what exactly is this test? Well, it's called NIPT, which stands for non-invasive prenatal testing. And honestly, it's an amazing piece of science. It works by analyzing these tiny little fragments of DNA that come from the placenta and circulate in the mother's blood. It's pretty incredible because it allows for this really powerful screening, all without posing any risk to the fetus. And then the result came back. The words on the page, high risk for trisomy 13. For Elle, this was just a complete and utter shock, a moment of absolute heartbreak that just seemed to come out of thin air. The aftermath was, as you can imagine, just a storm of emotion. I mean, trisomy 13, also called Patau syndrome, is an incredibly serious genetic disorder. The news just brought on these waves of panic and anxiety and fear. And for Elle, the central, just agonizing question was, how? How on earth could a PGT-A tested normal embryo get a result like this? Okay, so to answer that question, we've got to shift gears a little bit. We have to move from the emotional part of the story to the actual science behind these tests, because that's where we're going to find the clarity that Elle so desperately needed. So this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How can two super advanced genetic tests give you such wildly different signals? Well, the answer really boils down to what exactly each test is looking at. And here is the key difference right here. The PGT-A test, that first one, it only samples a few little cells from what will become the placenta. But the NIPT, that's the second test, it analyzes DNA from the entire placenta. So they're kind of looking at the same source, but at completely different scales. And this difference leads us to the most likely scientific explanation, which is a phenomenon called confined placental mosaicism, or CPM. Basically, this is a situation where the placenta has a mix of chromosomally normal and abnormal cells. But, and listen, this is the most critical part, the baby itself is completely chromosomally normal. The problem is literally confined to the placenta. So because NIPT is looking at DNA from the placenta, a condition like CPM can throw the results way off. And this is so important to understand. NIPT's accuracy isn't the same across the board. It's not a flat line. It can vary dramatically depending on the specific condition it's screening for. Let's actually look at the data, because this is where it gets really eye-opening. This table shows something called the positive predictive value, or PPV. Now, what that means is it's the chance that a high-risk result is actually true. So for trisomy 21, you see it's really high, about 91%. But then, look at trisomy 13. It drops all the way down to about 40%. Just incredible. This bar chart just makes that drop crystal clear, doesn't it? You can see it right there. The PPV for trisomy 21, way up there. Still pretty strong for trisomy 18. But then you get to trisomy 13, the exact condition Elle was facing, and the predictive value just plummets. It falls off a cliff. Let's just pause on that number for a second. 40%. Think about what that means. For trisomy 13, more than half, a full 60% of all high-risk results from an NIPT are actually false positives, meaning the fetus is chromosomally normal. That is just a stunning and absolutely crucial piece of information to have. So, armed with this statistical reality, Elle's medical team knew what to do. The next step wasn't to panic. No, it was to move from a screening test to a diagnostic test to find out the definitive truth. And this is the playbook right here. This is the path forward. Step 1, you get a screening result. And you have to understand, it's a measure of risk. It is not a diagnosis. Step 2, you talk to a genetic counselor, someone who can explain what it all means. And then step 3, you move forward with a diagnostic test to get the real, final answer. In this case, the diagnostic test they went with was an amniocentesis. Now, this is fundamentally different from the NIPT. Why? Because it doesn't look at the placenta at all. It actually tests cells that have been shed directly from the fetus into the amniotic fluid. This gives you a direct, unfiltered look at the baby's own chromosomes. And so, after a few very long, very anxious weeks, the results came in. The fetus was chromosomally normal. There was no trisomy 13. The NIPT result was, in fact, a false positive, almost certainly caused by that confined placental mosaicism we talked about. You can just imagine, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated relief. Elle's journey, from absolute terror to complete relief, it's so much more than just one person's story. It's an incredibly important lesson for anyone who's trying to navigate the really complex world of modern prenatal technology. So let's really lock in the key takeaways here, because this is what matters. Number 1, NIPT is a screening test, not a diagnostic test. They are not the same thing. 2, its accuracy can change drastically depending on the condition. That PPV for trisomy 13 is only around 40%. 3, PGT-A is a helpful tool, but it is not a 100% guarantee. And finally, and this is the most important one, never, ever make major life-altering decisions based on a screening result alone. Always, and I mean always, confirm with a genetic counselor and follow up with a true diagnostic test like an amnio. This whole story leaves us with a really big question for the age we live in. We have access to more medical data than ever before, right? But as Lay's experience just so clearly shows, having all that information is one thing, but knowing how to interpret it, that's everything. And that's a challenge that all of us are going to face as we navigate our health in this world of ever-advancing technology. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.